Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, we're back for the Investigative Journal on this Thursday. Yes, the week's coming quickly to an end, and boy, is it hot. I guess everybody here in Southern California is roasting, and I bet you they're roasting even, and literally roasting, in Northern California. The largest fire in the state's history is still burning out of control. Another one started here in the south called the Holy Fire, and boy, I'll tell you, that made me think about things. Are the weather patterns changing naturally, or does man have something to do with weather control? We knew they started weather control back, hundreds of years ago. They tried to. They were successful at certain things, and even in the 40s they were cloud seeding, hoping to use it to help a army in war. Basically rain on your enemy so you can win the war. So we know that you can go to the website, the internet, and get thousands of stories about weather control. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that and talk about a crisis that's going on in Naples, Florida, up to Tampa, Florida. And it's a cyanobacteria outbreak that is affecting the coastline as well as the interior, Lake Okeechobee. And it reminded me of what's happening in Lake Atitlan. And I got onto that story in 2009 about that algae bloom there that's toxic to both animals and human beings. And we'll talk about the devastation in Florida that you don't hear about anywhere. Well, there's so much else going on. The mainstream media is obsessed with Russia. And the reason is they want to keep people away from the truth. That's how they do it. Well, anyway, let me follow up on what I did yesterday, and that is talking about the Jesuits and their control of Freemasonry, as well as secret societies in America, and how devastating that is for the world. And not a lot of people catch on to the story, and the reason is that the masters of deception, the Jesuits and the Vatican, are in full force today, boy, and they are snowballing a lot of people. All you intelligent millenniums out there who want to go and become a socialist, look at Venezuela and then start reading about the Jesuits, and you'll see that they were instrumental in a lot of socialist movements as well as creation of communism. So you better read about your founding fathers if you want America to turn into a socialist country. I mentioned that there's several books you can look into, and I will name them as I go along today. But I have a number of quotes and things out of there that verify what I'm saying here. Now, in 1814, the Jesuits not only restored themselves, I say they never, ever disbanded. They only allowed the world to think they were during the American Revolution, so the enemy here in America could put down their guard and basically allow Catholicism into America when it was taboo. The Jesuits not only restored themselves through intrigues and deception, but also restored the papacy. And the papacy is stronger than ever. And they use the papacy as a cover. Freemasons are also used as really unconscious tools and placed in the foreground while the Jesuits maneuver behind the scenes, doing all their dirty work. That's why you'll never hear about them being helpful in making sure ISIS is funded, using certain priests as spies. This is something you'll never hear about on the Sean Hannity show, which is a right-wing conservative multimillionaire who tells you that everything will be better if America will be great again. But the problem is he probably collects 15 to 20 million a year or more to lie to you. And if he enjoys that, that's fine, because I'm telling you, if he wanted to really research the truth, he wouldn't be a card-carrying Catholic. So there you go, Mr. Hannity. Take that, and you wouldn't give a damn. You'll just say, hey, these people are crazy. And you'll laugh all the way to the bank. Go right ahead. But at least a few of us understand who you are, as well as Rush Limbaugh, as well as all those people on CNN, as well as Alex Jones and the alternative media. You see, they like to rail on him, but he works with them. And then anybody that's in his camp, so to speak, so they would say, well, people like me are in his camp. I'm by no means in his camp. I know him well. Had a show right after his a number of years ago, and I know what he is all about. But anyway, Jesuits. They are so skillful at inventing misinformation. They do it all the time. They use these people I just mentioned. But you can go back all the way to the French Revolution, and a priest by the name of, a Jesuit priest by the name of Augustin Barruel, he mentions it was planned by the Jesuits and executed by the secret societies, the Bavarian Illuminati, Freemasonry, in 1797. This is after they were involved in the American Revolution. Yes, folks, the Jesuits and the Vatican were instrumental in creating your country for a reason, and that is they want to get rid of all the freedoms that supposed Constitution they were instrumental in passing gave us, so that they could gain power here through freedom of religion. And then once they do have the power, they take it away from everybody else. And that sounds a little bit like Islam. Well, Islam is their creation as well. And isn't it fun? They'll fight tooth and nail. They'll have people from the Christians fight the Muslims. Now, let's get straight here. The Jesuits and the Vatican are not Christians. Okay? They use Christianity as a cover. They are Satanists, Luciferians, atheists, whatever they are. They can be what they want, just till they, so they get what they want. So we have the French Revolution being instrumental. Without the Jesuits, it wouldn't have happened, put it that way. And then people say, well, they were disbanded during that period of time. Technically, that's what they'll tell you. The Vatican will tell you, yes, we had to get rid of them in the 1700s because they were ruining our business. And then they were basically mysteriously reinstated in 1814. But folks, it was a cover. They never were disbanded. Now, I mentioned that one book you ought to get is The Secret Societies of All Ages and Countries, Volume 1 and 2 by Charles William Heckerthorne, published by R. Bentley & Son, originally 1875. Guess who published it? Harvard University. They never republished it, and you think they'd publish it now? Are you kidding me? But on page 389, it says this: the sect of the Constitutorials aimed at the preservation of feudal and theocratic dominion. The rich and ambitious patricians of Rome and other Italian states belonged to it. Tabot, an ex-Jesuit and confessor to the Holy Father, was the ruling spirit. And this book will lay claim to a lot of things that you may have not heard in the past about why the Jesuits were instrumental in creating these secret societies, their influence in them, and how they use the secular world to their advantage. Now, secret societies in Spain, even before the French Revolution, this is on page 420, there existed in Spain secret societies, some averse to monarchy governments, others in favor of clerocracy. Among the latter may be mentioned the Concepcionistas, or defenders of the Immaculate Conception, who carried their zeal for Ferdinand VII and their tenderness for the Church to such a degree as to desire the return of the blessed times of the Holy Inquisition. They also sought to get hold of the management of public affairs, to turn them to their own profit, and dismal administration of the Bourbons showed that they partly succeeded. Probably from this association arose that of the Defenders of the Faith, Jesuits in disguise, who in 1820 spread themselves all over Spain, taking care of the throne and the altar and still more influence. Now on page 434, we talk about Jesuitical influence. Catholic ceremonies, unknown in ancient Freemasonry, were introduced in 1735 to 1740. In the chapter of Clermont, so called in honor of Louis of Bourbon, Prince of Clermont, at the time of the Grand Master of the Order in France. From that time, the influence of the Jesuits on the fraternity made itself more and more felt. The candidate was no longer received in a lodge, but in the city of Jerusalem, not the ideal Jerusalem, but a clerical Jerusalem, typifying Rome. The meetings were called Capitula Canicorum, and the monkish language and the prevailed therein. In the statutes is seen the hand of James Lannes, the second general of the Jesuits, and the aim at universal empire betrays itself. For at the reception of the Sublime Nights and the last two chapters of the Apocalypse are read to the candidate a glowing picture of that universal monarchy which the Jesuits hoped to establish. The sect spread very rapidly, for when Baron Hun came to Paris in 1742 and was received into the highest Jesuit degrees, he found on his return to Germany that those degrees were already established in Saxony under the government of Marshall, whose labors he undertook to promote. So some people in the background are going, why are you going back to 1742? Oh, they've changed. They're just priests, they're just loving priests who want to help the poor. Well, ask the American natives and the Canadian natives about the mission schools that the Jesuits started, where they genocided children by the thousands, and not a word said here in America about it, right? Unless you go up north, and just about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a huge lawsuit settlement, and the Tamaki law firm took on the Jesuits and received something in upwards of $200 and some million for reparations for the Jesuit schools that took the lives and genocided many American Indians. Interesting story. So they're doing it today. That's why we go back to 1742 and even further than that to lay a foundation that they don't do it, that they do it again today. Now, the people that want to protect the Jesuits will say they changed and they only did this in the past. Well, if they did, why would you support them anyway? I mean, come on. If they've killed millions of people, why do people, our presidents, go running to Rome? Let's say even if they changed, I wouldn't. But they haven't changed. They're killing just as many millions today in many different ways. And so are your presidents, and so are most of the leaders of the world working together with them. And that includes Israel and the Knesset, the Israeli leaders. Now, on page 435 of that book, The Strict Observance, a Rite of Freemasonry, and the rite of strict observance was permeated by the Jesuitical ideas. It is certain that at one time the power of the New Templars was very great and prepared the way for what we now know as the Vatican-led New World Order. Now on page 446, see, they were killing people even back then, and they've killed a lot of people today. Now, assassinations of someone by the name of Rossi. On page 446, from what I have since learned, it would seem that the clerical party and not the Carabinieri planned and executed the deed. Rossi, shortly before his death, had levied contributions, taxes, to the extent of 4 million scudi on clerical property, and was known, that's Italian money at the time of Sicilian, and was known to plan further schemes to reduce the influence of the church. The reasons for attributing the death of Rossi to the Carabinieri or to the Jesuits are of equal weight on both sides. 441. Discussions at Wilmshead Bad. The statements contained in Dr. Stark's book, The Coping Stone, page 437, concerning the influence of the Jesuits in the Masonic body, being unable to give information concerning the secrets, formed one of the chief topics discussed. Some of the chiefs of the observance produced considerable confusion by one of the high degrees which they had professed to know, or to render an account of large sums they had received on behalf of an order. The main point was to settle whether Masonry was to be considered as a continuation of the Order of the Templars, and whether the secrets of the sect were to be sought for in the modern Templar degrees. After 30 sittings, the answer was in the negative. The chiefs of the strict observance were defeated, and the Duke of Innsbruck suspended the order for 3 years, from which blow it never recovered. The Swedes professed to possess all the secrets. The Duke of Brunswick hastened to learn them, but found that the Swedes knew no more than the Germans, whence new dissensions arose between the Masons and the two nations. So we're finding a lot of interesting things. The reason I like this book is that it's a little bit different than what you're going to get on 99% of people who research the Jesuits as well. And in page 442, it says, a new degree, that of the Knights of the Beneficence, which was based on the principles enunciated in St. Martin's book at the Tableau Natural. The foundation of the new order was attributed to the influence of the Jesuits. Another result was a league between Masonry and the Illuminati, and it is still a matter of speculation whether these latter were not behind the Jesuits, brought about the exertions of Spartacus or Weishaupt, who had long ago discerned the influence he could obtain by the cooperation of the Masons, whom he, of course, employed as his unconscious tools. But Jesuitical influence at the time was too powerful to be overcome. They sided with and thus strengthened the influence of the Duke, hence the opposition of Germany to the principles of the French Revolution, which broke out soon after, an opposition which was carried to its height by the manifesto of the Duke of Brunswick, so loudly praised by the courtly historians, and of which the German princes made such good use to induce the German Confederacy to surround France with a fiery line of deluded patriotism. So, as we go back hundreds of years, we see this kind of influence behind the scenes to work on a, whether it be a monarchy, or whether it be a democracy, as it is today, or a republic like ours. They work behind the scenes with anybody, as long as they can bring the world to a one world government, one world order under their control. Now, Freemasonry has made the tool of prince and priestcraft, though occasionally the Jesuits turned the tables on the prince when it wasn't going their way. Now, on page 453, some Jesuitical maneuvers, Napoleonic Freemasonry, not entirely to lose its peculiar methods, ventured to change its institutions. Jesuitism cast loving eyes on it and drew it towards itself, as in the days of strict observance. Murat threw out his net, but was removed just when it was most important for the interest of the Jesuits that he should have remained. He proposed to transform the French lodges, of which in 1852 there were 325, whilst in 1861 only 269 could be found, into societies of mutual agreement, and to abandon and submit the higher Masonic sphere of morality and humanity to society controlled by who? The Jesuits, which in the last 60 years has already overcome and incorporated the whole Roman clergy, once its rivals, and by oblique paths also many of the conservative sects of the other creeds. Murat did not succeed, but others may, and though the Masons say that Jesuitism shall not succeed in that time, yet how is Freemasonry, that possesses to meddle neither with politics nor religion, to counteract the political and religious machinations of the Jesuits? And even if Freemasonry had the same weapons, are there men among the order able to them with the ability and fearlessness that distinguish the followers of Loyola? And this author believes no. Besides the Masons, though, they talk loudly of for fraternization and equality, when driven at bay, become the staunchest conservatives, wherefore the International Alliance in the year 1870 solemnly excommunicated Freemasonry, and in 1880 exacted from every candidate for admission to the society a declaration that he was not a Mason. Well, on page 468, the Jesuits soon poked into these lodges and got a hold of women as well, better half of mankind, and founded new lodges for them, or modified existing ones that the right to further their own purposes. Thus it is that a truly monkish way was introduced into some of them by the Jesuits, divided into 10 degrees, and we find such passages in the Catechism as these. Are you prepared, sister, to sacrifice life for the good of the Catholic Apostolic Roman Church? The 10th or last degree was called the Princess of the Crown, and the great portion of the ritual treats of the Queen of Sheba. This rite was established in Saxony in 1779. We can go on and on and on, and I'm going to do that a little bit, but here we only got a couple minutes in this half hour. And the reason I'm going back in the history, and some of this can be confusing, some of it you're probably saying, oh, this isn't important, but the point I'm trying to make is they have been doing this kind of stuff, working with these secret societies for years and years and years, hundreds of years, and are quite adept at it. And it hasn't stopped today. They are very instrumental in the Yale Skull and Bones, and you know the ceremonies there include you have to lay honor to the Pope. The Pope will let you lay in a coffin, etc., etc. We've gone through how you can see these Vatican symbols even in the Skull and Bones. And we talked yesterday about these roasts that you see all the time in Hollywood. Let's roast Bob Hope. Let's roast Bruce Willis. They roast politicians of stature. And it's an old Masonic ritual. And they're doing the same today. And nothing, go and look the roast of Bruce Willis. I find it interesting because all the Masonic symbols are right there in the flooring and where the podium lies. And you'll see that these guys, once you get to a certain point, have to pledge allegiance to this group, the secret group, that have nothing in common with freedom, democracy, and you, the Hollywood fan who goes to their movies and pays their bills. They're basically looking to a world that serves only the elite and looking to depopulate this world by, as Ted Turner said, right, the founder of CNN, by at least 90%, folks. We can't exist with all you useless eaters, as Henry Kissinger said. You useless eaters living here. All you do is usurp the food of mankind, and you do nothing to raise it up to higher levels like we do in our secret societies. And that's basically what they all think. And that includes the President of the United States, no matter who he may be at the time, the selected president, as well as the President of Australia, the head of England, you name it, the Queen, and the head of Israel and the Knesset, United States Congress at the top levels. So it's a little club, and you're not in it. And boy, do they have some plans for you, including war, pestilence, and desolation. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour. Enough on the Jesuits today, huh? Why don't you just go and chat? Well, I'll do some more tomorrow. But a lot of times you get that history, all those facts and things going back hundreds of years, and it blows your mind. And I personally can't take any more today. So I'll get back to some more from those interesting books that we're talking about that you can find. You can see my last 2 shows. You can find them on YouTube or at FirstAmendmentRadio.com or on my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. And I have not been putting my shows up lately. And I'll start doing that again. So you'll get, you can go back and look at shows from almost 14 years ago, if you'd like, all the way on up to today. So I'll start getting some of those recent shows from the last month or so up. So, what do you want to talk about today? I like talking about the weather sometimes. You know, I think in my next life, I'll be a weatherman, a meteorologist. You know, they average about 90,000 a year, not a bad job. And then people, Christians in the back, are going, Greg, there is no next life. This is your only one. And then you get to sit in heaven, and you're just a little soul running around. And, you know, I was perusing the internet the other day, as many of us do. And you know how you just go through it and you see something? Oh, I think I'll look at this. A guy said that he had died on the operating table when he was in his late 60s, and he talked with God. And the conversation was, kind of like if you're sitting at the bar talking to your buddy, and he asked him, though, God asked him, he said, he asked God, can you tell me what the meaning of life is? And he never did give an answer to that. And my question was, do you believe this guy? I don't know. Occasionally, every now and then, one or two people, my dog doesn't apparently, he says, no, don't. He says one or two people out of millions who die say they have seen God. Isn't that interesting? And I don't know about that, because you could be hallucinating that. You could. I'm not going to say he didn't, but how come only one or a few people, and why not everybody? I guess everybody doesn't come back. He said then he came back to life, and he's still alive. Said it changed his life. So anyway, people are going, you're not going to be a weatherman in your next life because there is no next life. And then Hindus, Buddhists will say, yes, you may be a weatherman if that's what you're chosen to do, depending on what you did in this life. Well, I love the weather. I always read about these crazy storms. I secretly want to be one of these tornado chasers. So maybe I will be a weatherman, according to the Hindus or the Buddhists, in my next life. Who knows? But anyway, talking about the weather, which I like talking about, keeps you out of trouble, right? Only when you don't talk about weather manipulation, then you can get in trouble when you're sitting at the Thanksgiving dinner with very conservative people or liberal people who still believe in the red, white, and blue and all that stuff. They go, they can't control the weather. That's impossible. And one person will say, only God can control the weather. Then your other uncle will say, there is no God. What are you talking about, Jack? You get these kind of arguments at your Thanksgiving table, right? And it's all because of the weather. So what can you talk about anymore? Without, have a very nice discussion. So you have to leave out weather manipulation, but we're not going to do that. Following weeks, though, of below average tropical activity in the eastern Pacific Ocean, Mother Nature is now setting up a number of cyclones, a number of hurricanes that are now all lined up, ready to hit Mexico, right? Why do they always hit Mexico? They're going to slam somewhere down there. Why don't they hit San Diego? I don't know. I've been living in San Diego for years. And I asked, when was the last hurricane here? People can't remember. But our friends down in Mexico, they get 4 or 5 a year, and now even more. And if you look at all these lining up right now, one's got to come through, right? So anyway, over 1,400 miles east, we got Hector. It's a hurricane right now. Several other tropical cyclones right behind it, and they're expected to pass south of Hawaii. And then they're all lined up. If they go north, or push north, they could go into Upper Baja or, praise tell, San Diego. Wouldn't that be interesting? Be a little bit of excitement for the people there, San Diego, right? Give them something to think about. Get their water bottles ready and everything, get them something to do. Go to the grocery stores and clean out the shelves. Get in your car and drive up to the mountains. So we got over 1,400 miles we got Hector. East of Hector is Christie, which is strengthened quickly into a tropical storm. And that was by Tuesday. About 1,000 miles east of Christie and closer to Mexico's Pacific coast early Tuesday, Hurricane John and tropical storm Ileana. And Ileana's dissipating, but there's another one right behind her. The remnants of Ileana are forecast to pivot north and northwest around John, become less defined, but there's other ones growing in the Pacific, and I'm looking at a map here. And they're all lined up here, out there, south of Hawaii, doing their traditional movement across. Now they're moving up. One, Ileana is a storm now. It's hitting right below Baja. John's right behind her. Christy and Hector. Okay, they're all there. Ready, and that's just the beginning of the hurricane season here. So we'll be watching that closely. And we'll be watching also, my favorite event is always a tsunami. Now that really excites me. And, you know, when I hear about them, I get quite excited. And my first reaction is, I want to go watch that. And I don't know why I'm that way. I don't know if you're the same way as me. But I'm always wondering, okay, what happened? Oh, well, it knocked down a few houses and a few people were hurt. Oh, no. Nobody was killed? Are you kidding me? That's no big deal. I want to see a lot of people go. Aren't you, you know, some people, aren't you like that really? You drive by, for example, you're driving down the freeway, and all of a sudden you see a car crash, and everybody starts looking. You're going, why am I going so slow here? And all of a sudden you see these people looking, and I bet you 9 out of 10 people are going, oh, they tell me it's just an accident, only cars were damaged, nobody killed. Oh, come on, this is nothing. Give me a real car accident where everybody gets killed. Then it's something I can talk about. And it's the same with these tsunamis and tornadoes, right? You hear about them thousands of miles away. Thousands of miles away, there's this big tornado, and oh no, nobody was killed. Oh, I'm so upset. I want to see everybody in that whole town just blown away. Then I can talk about it to my friends. I can call everybody on the internet. Hey, did you hear about that tornado? 1,000 people were killed. My God. And deep down you're going, thank God it didn't happen near me. And I bet you, if it happened in your town, you wouldn't be talking the same way. That's why I love the weather. It gets people excited. You can see the real truth about people when you see these tragedies. And the bigger the tragedy, the better people like it. And that segues right into a tragedy that's going on in Florida right now. And I'm surprised you really don't hear a lot about this going on, okay? You really don't hear much, but I'm going to talk about it today because they did even talk about it on ABC local news in Florida. And there's about 100 miles of coastline right now being affected from Naples to Sarasota. And if you're familiar with Florida, you'll know that's on the Gulf Coast. And if you know Florida, just close your eyes and think of you know the shape of Florida. In the middle is a big lake called Lake Okeechobee. And in Florida, there's a real challenge. There's so many people moving there to get rid of the wastewater. Because of the way Florida is, you know, the surface, how many people are moving there. So this wastewater problem is really troubling. And it's causing a lot of problems. And the Army Corps of Engineers went in there and they decided to change the flow of the water coming out of Okeechobee and all this stuff into the coast. And it's really caused a disaster. And people there right now are saying they've never seen such devastation. Now, getting back to people who love devastation and weather-related carnage, how come you don't, how many of you people that love to see 1,000 people die in a tornado, but you'll say no, oh, it's terrible. How come you're not feeling bad about the millions of fish that are washing up on the Florida coast? I'm looking at pictures here, and in one picture, I see more fish dying than I have in the last 100 hurricanes that ever occurred in America, but nobody cares. There's fish. I see a dead manatee right here. I see a dead shark. They're all rolling in the coast, and then guess what you see on the news? John and Mary have gone down to Florida with their kids to have a vacation, and they're upset. And Mary says to the newsman, oh my God, it smells here. We have to leave and cut our vacation short. Oh, sorry. All these poor dead fish have ruined your vacation. But the real problem here is that this is a huge, huge problem going on in Florida. And is it a prophecy unfolding? Says, I love there's a guy came up with this website called Apocalyptic Weather. And he relates everything to the Bible. Masses of fish dying, the whole thing like that. And he says most prophecies have double meanings. And of course he's doing it with this in Florida. And so the depressing event here, if you're looking at pictures here, like I am, and you can go and check this out, it's going on right now. Well, what is it? So I better be clear. It is a algae bloom. Some will call it a red tide. And it's a toxic algae bloom that kills fish. It's not pleasing to people, can do the same, can get you really sick. And this, I have familiarity with this from a story I did in 2009 regarding what went on in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, and that's a beautiful volcanic lake that has towns all around it, and the sewerage flows right into the lake. What do you think's going to happen? And, they've been trying to fix this problem for years up there, but they really won't. And it isn't the people's fault. They have no money. But the reason is you got to figure out so that the poop and the pee doesn't go into the lake. And it's caused a cyanobacteria outbreak. The last big one was in 2009. The worst since then has been last year, and it's no better this year, I hear. And this is going on now, similar in Florida. Also I'm looking at a picture, besides this algae bloom, a lot of beaches there have been mysteriously disappearing, leaving boats beached on the shoreline and leaving people baffled why the tides are moving way out. That happened in Tampa Bay. I saw pictures of that where the Tampa Bay people woke up one morning, there was no water in Tampa Bay. So it's crazy. And I love following this stuff. And there's a website called Apocalyptic Weather. So let me see how much time I got here. I thought I might play something from it. Or, yes, let me see if I can do that. Okay, Florida red tide or algae bloom is a massive wildlife die-off going on right now. And he says on his headline here, it's time to leave. Well, what about the poor fish? They can't leave the ocean. Unfortunately, when they do, they end up on the beach dead. So we got to figure out something here. I mentioned earlier about weather manipulation and certain things going on. That's for another show because it's complicated. And some of the technology that's been developed now is being used, i.e. we also have to add chemtrails, causing severe problems to the atmosphere. And we'll get into that in another show. But this is about a 16-minute, I got about 10 minutes, 8 minutes, so I'll play some of this. And I want to warn you that the weather's been very hot here, and my computer's been acting up. So if this doesn't play all the way through, I'll try to chime in to cover the spots where, you get that little circle going around. And you go, God, just play it, will you? Here we go. Florida, red tide, massive algae bloom, killing off wildlife, sharks, manatee, fish, what have you. But the worst problem is people have been inconvenienced on their vacations. Here we go. Here we go.
I just crossed over the Placido going into Boca Grande. I am now on the island, passing over Gasparilla Sound. And as soon as I crossed over the bridge, it instantly smelled like a septic tank. And I'm not even joking. It's horrendous. The smell is horrendous. The red tide was like a week ago today is whenever it started up and came through. Shortly after the Lake Okeechobee discharge.
We're looking at thousands of fish now washed up on the shoreline.
This is what happens when you combine divine chastisement with human screw-up. You get death.
This is devastating. This is on a proportion that we've never seen before in Florida. Welcome to Apocalyptic Weather. Today, we're going to be talking about the consequences of human activity and what happens when they meet a divine wrath of God event. The Lord of the Storms, Lord Rael, has returned. He is the Christ you read about in the scriptures. He has been judging the world and chastising his own people so that they can wake up, so that they can see the damage they're causing to themselves, to this earth, to all of humanity, to every living thing on this planet. What this is the results of an immense amount of rainfall, hurricanes, storms, all directed by Lord Rael, by the divine, being dumped onto Florida, and Florida does not know how to manage their water appropriately. Not enough to stop this from occurring. So the backstory to this actually traces across the last century when large storms, hurricanes were hitting Florida and Lake Okeechobee was flooding its banks and it was causing serious issues. The Army Corps of Engineers decided to come in, build a levee system which would keep Lake Okeechobee's water in place. But what it did is it rerouted all of South Florida's water systems to create the setup for just a terrible economic and ecological disaster, and that's exactly what we're seeing today. Basically, water doesn't flow naturally into the Everglades. Instead, the glades were dried up for sugarcane production. The waste and the excess minerals and materials from the cane production is pumped back into Lake Okeechobee. From the north, you have all of the cattle ranches, dairy farms, orange groves, hog farms, every agricultural area and agricultural event that you have from the north into.
Okay. The dogs are really at it here, so here we go.
I'm not even joking. It's horrendous. The smell is horrendous. The red tide was like a week ago today is whenever it started up and came through. Shortly after all of the phosphates, you have all of the waste, you have all of the nutrient that's being pumped into the lake. It's basically like a big cesspool, a sitting retention pond that's baking in a tropical climate. Every day for about 7 or 8 months in Florida, the temperatures are well over 90 degrees. It's a tropical monsoonal climate, so half the year they're seeing intense rainfall, and you also have hurricanes. Now, what the Army Corps of Engineers did is they built a system to channel the water sideways out to either the Gulf of Mexico or out to the Atlantic. The problem is when the lake gets too high, they open those floodgates and it allows for that toxic waste that's sitting in Lake Okeechobee from all of the runoff from various areas, and that includes runoff from developments. There's tons of developments, tons of golf courses, tons of places where they're manicuring the grass and taking care of the landscaping, and so all of that's going into the lake, and then when they open up those dikes, those floodgates, everything flows out of there. So this toxic blue-green algae which forms in the lake is now being pumped all across South Florida out to the oceans, and it's causing red tide, it's causing immense wildlife die-offs. I mean, we're seeing this increase. This is not a decreasing problem. They've tried to tackle this problem in years past. It's only gotten worse, and now we're adding on top of that the divine chastisement, the rainfall the storms, the hurricanes, all of that is causing those lake levels to rise. The rivers get saturated, and so they've got to open those floodgates, and now it's just a toxic sewage waste dump pouring across Florida. People are complaining about itchy eyes, burning eyes and nostrils. People can't breathe in the stuff. They're choking on it. It's causing all sorts of respiratory issues. It can even cause acute liver failure because this stuff is so toxic. What it is it's a cyanobacteria. It's also known as a cyanotoxin. And the word cyanide it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a poison.
Okay, that's exactly what was going on. And sorry for that little glitch in the tape about a minute or two back. But anyway, I think you got the point. That's exactly what was going on in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. And there's people there, when I was doing the story, were experiencing the same respiratory symptoms from cyanobacteria, algae bloom, that's going on in Florida. And I think he explained it really well. And if you look at Lake Okeechobee, it's a big lake in the center, and it used to overflow down into the glades, the Everglades, and that's what the Everglades were. And now what they've done is they've channeled the water out into the oceans, which is drying up the Everglades, and God knows how that changes the ecosystem there, and the amount of animals have been killed. But then, because of this, it's created this huge cyanobacteria algae problem that is really going to devastate that whole state. And thanks to the Army Corps of Engineers. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.